common people are dealing with the crisis, not only with hard work, but also with laughter. Now let's turn to an American comedian who raised funds and sent medical supplies to affected areas in China by doing what he does best, making people laugh and having people laugh.
This is Chinese New Year in quarantine. It's never happened before, but it's really admirable. People are finding a way to do Chinese New Year in quarantine. They have everything.
He's Jesse Appell, known as Jesse in China. Jesse is a former Fulbright scholar who studied the traditional art of Chinese comedy, Xiangsheng, or crosstalk. After he returned to the U.S. over the Chinese New Year, he found himself unable to go back to China because of the COVID-19 outbreak. He barely sat still, putting on performances, presenting the funny side of the Chinese lives in quarantine. His set was a breather from the sober mood with pearls of laughter.
Wuhan is under actual quarantine, places like Beijing and the whole country, people are basically voluntarily staying indoors. People have stocked up on food. They stocked up on food 2.5 weeks ago. They went home, and watching my Chinese social media feed has been an experience in watching a whole country of people slowly go mad.
Wonderful. We love your video. It's so funny. Tell me, how did you come up with the idea of putting all of those pieces about how people were spending their time during this COVID-19 outbreak, but in such a funny way?
Well, the original way that the show happened was I was recording CGTN back in Beijing, and when Chinese New Year came, this was the break in the shooting schedule, so I got to go back to America for Chinese New Year. So I was visiting my family here in America when the virus got really bad, and then all of a sudden I couldn't go back. And while I was here in America, I was like everybody else in China. Everybody was worried. We didn't know what was going to happen, and it was certainly not funny. And while I was in America thinking, what can I do? What can I do? I got the idea to do a charity show. And so once I got the idea to do a charity show, I started doing all the preparation, finding a theater, being able to do that. We eventually did it with my high school. But I didn't know what to perform because, again, it's not a funny topic. But at the same time, I was seeing stuff on my Weibo and on my WeChat feeds of all these really funny videos of people who were keeping a good sense of humor in a really hard time. And I realized what I needed to do wasn't necessarily tell my story. I needed to tell the story of the people that were over in China that Americans might not be able to see. And their story was kind of a way of being able to get what was happening in China into the eyes of the American audience, but in a way that felt like it was funny and that was easy enough for Americans to understand, but also deep enough that people could get a real sense of what was going on.
Right. People were staying at home for home quarantine in order to make their city safe. However, it's not easy if you're confined to one apartment with so many adults. And let's take a look at what people were doing. They were trying to train for the Olympic Games, as you said. Let's take a look.
Put them all together to the Olympic music and cut it. I thought it was really funny. So I wound up putting it as the end of the piece that I did for the charity show. And then the reaction in the live show was so good that I decided, I should actually edit this and put it up on the internet, because I had no idea how the content would go. But the people at the live show that donated money to watch the show, they really liked it. So maybe people on the Chinese internet would like it too.
Yeah,
that was the idea.
I really like that guy who was sitting there trying to go fishing in his own home's fish tank.
Yeah.
Quite a tranquility over there.
Yeah, I love that. And then I love it. I love everything about that. I love the creativity for him to go fishing, and I love his family back behind the camera, like trying to hold it together.
Right.
It's hard. It's really hard. I feel part of the reason I want to do the show is I feel kind of bad being here out in the States. Up until now, we've been lucky. We can still go outside. We can still be in public places. It's getting a little worse now, and maybe we should be more careful about that. But especially when the virus was starting, I felt a big gap between my life, where I was able to go outside, and then all of my friends in China that I would see on my WeChat moments, and in all our Chinese comedian groups. Everybody was having a real rough time of it, and I feel a lot of times. I do comedy in between cultures, and a lot of times when I come back to America, the most powerful thing I can do is just share the stories of my Chinese friends that are going through whatever's happening in the real world.
Yeah.
And right now, this happened to be something that Americans had heard about the coronavirus, but didn't know what was actually happening. They didn't know everybody was indoors. And maybe the video is just a little part in helping people understand what's going on right now in China.
Right. I mean, if you look at how people were trying their best to do this social distancing, which was advised by the public health workers, the way they do it, they're really stringent, very strict with themselves.
On their neighbors to see if anybody's breaking the rules.
This guy looking at the cars and trying to note down how many cars passed the window. And this cartoon character eating the cars.
I really feel for these people, because in December, before the virus, I got a sinus surgery on my sinuses, and I had to go and stay at home for 5 days recovering. And that was a long time. Like, I was preparing all these jokes about what it's like to stay at home for 5 days in a row and never leave, and now those jokes are not funny anymore. Everybody outraged me by a lot. It's not even close, too. It was by a lot. And so the funny thing now has become how I only made it 5 days without going crazy, and everybody else is still fighting through. So
that's a great point, Jesse. I could tell from that photo you put on your web about how much donation you eventually get from this performance you were trying to give out, charity performance, and the pride on your face when you were holding that box of medical supplies and masks that were supposed to transport to China.
Yeah.
And I was so impressed by that pride on your face. There seems to be a lot of things in your facial expression to me in a way. Jesse?
Yeah, it was. That's a really good point. When I was lifting that box, I mean, what was going through my head? First of all, I was exhausted because I had woken up at 3 in the morning that day to try to record an internet program for the Wuhan CGTN. So I didn't have a lot of sleep. But when I went to the boxing event with the partners WeStar, the group that we've been working with to get the shipments over, when I went to that event and I saw 30 people in that room boxing all these supplies, and I realized we'd actually done it. We did the show, we raised the money, and then I was really worried that we wouldn't be able to buy anything with the money, because I was worried we wouldn't be able to find the medical supplies.
Yeah.
And so once we had worked through with WeStar to be able to purchase supplies, and we had the supplies there in a physical box, and we could help ship them off, it all kind of came together for me, and I was like, it's been a really hard time for everybody, and I haven't been through the worst of it because I was here in America. Even though it was hard for everybody, I saw a lot of good things too. We got supplies to the people who need them. I saw Americans and Chinese people all working together in the same direction with the same goal, trying to help each other as people.
Yeah.
And this is something that even a couple months ago, I didn't see anything like that. You know, it kind of took a crisis, I think, for people to realize that we're all just people and we're all here to help each other.
You know, having said that,
Let's
though,
hope.
this is a very dramatic and also sad and emotional time. You know, I've been doing program about the outbreak from the day one when it was being announced publicly as a public health crisis until today. So every day when I go back home, I feel so heavy. You know, I have to breathe really hard, not because of wearing masks, but also because of something. I can't name what is it, but something. But
you know,
it's
like there's a weight. Yeah.
There we go. Yes, Jesse.
Bad.
But watching what you have presented on the stage, both the videos and the way you present the videos and put yourself out there, make me feel that I finally have some partners on the front line with us. Jesse, what was it like for you to have this humor out of this very heavy time?
Yeah, I mean, I really believe, especially when it's hard times, we need to find a way to laugh. We just have to find a way to laugh. And if you don't do that, everything gets way worse. I think a lot of times people mistake, I saw a great quote from John Cleese, who is one of the creators of Monty Python. He said that a lot of times people mistake being serious and being solemn. Being serious means that you're taking the topic seriously, but that doesn't mean you need to be solemn, like, you know, everything is a funeral. Even when there are really people who are suffering, it doesn't mean that you need to necessarily be, you know, very sad and very withdrawn, because that doesn't help people get through. And so there's a time and a place for everything. And so as a comedian, my job is to make people laugh. And what I was worried about, honestly, was that, you know, the internet, context gets mixed up. People on the internet like to pile on things, either good or bad. I was worried that I did this thing that was really good in America, and we did this show that the people here really liked. And when I put it up on the internet, people would say, oh, he's not being respectful to the people who are suffering now, or like, oh, he's in America, so like he's not, you know, 他不吃苦, you know, he's not suffering like everybody else. And I was worried it would come off as offensive. But I think what we came out with, what happened yesterday, is I woke up after putting the video up myself on my own account, and I woke up to find that the video had been pirated and spread everywhere on the internet.
Yes.
So
it went viral.
So the funny thing about this whole thing is that it went super viral, but nobody knew who I was because I put my name at the beginning of the piece, but whoever pirated the video cut the first 6 seconds off.
But we are going to put your name.
And then
we're going to put your name here.
There we go.
That's this talk.
That's all I wanted. That's all I wanted.
Yes. You know, it's just myth that the Chinese don't laugh, or they just laugh in a very strange way about strange things. But in your video, certainly it shows a very different China than what has been portrayed, particularly in the past 2 years or 3. So after you know, watching the video and interacting with you, what people are saying, and how would you explain about the humor that is also vibrant here in this country?
Well, I mean, Chinese people are very funny because I do Chinese comedy for a living, and even before I did comedy for a living in China, when I was studying abroad, like I had Chinese friends that were very funny and had great senses of humor. I think in America and around the outside world, people don't see that a lot because all the humor that I showed in that video was Chinese people being funny to Chinese people. And I feel like sometimes there's something that when Chinese people are showing outsiders what their life and their culture is like, sometimes they are a little bit too conservative and they're worried about how they're going to be seen, and so they're more proper, and there are times to be proper and to be very very polite, but this is one of the reasons why the outside world doesn't see this comedy, is because sometimes people have trouble opening up. And so I was happy with that routine because I was able to show some of that energy that people would be sharing with each other, that maybe people in the United States might not be able to see.
Yeah. Jesse, as we speak, we also understand the confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the United States have been rising. We hope people there will be safe with the right amount of protection and also caution, social distancing, and also our warm regard to people in the U.S. as well. And hopefully they can go through this period of time with a little bit of laughter too. Jesse.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I hope everything turns out to be okay here as well.
Jesse Appell, keep your smile on the face and make everybody laugh, even at difficult times. We really need it. Really appreciate Jesse. Thank you so much. 加油, Jesse.
Thank you so much. 加油!
Welcome back. We now see an apparent worrying trend of a worsening COVID-19 outbreak in other countries, potentially even more severe than in China, at least for now. In the epicenter of the outbreak in Wuhan, daily confirmed cases have exceeded 100. Many are concerned now about how the city where the outbreak started can pick up the pieces and move on. How's life been for those who survived the infections? Earlier, I talked to Zhang Wuyi from Wuhan. He and his father both suffered from COVID-19. After receiving treatment in hospital, they recovered. And they are now at home. They are trying to go through their 14 days quarantine. Let's hear their stories. And now we are joined via Skype by Zhang Wuyi, who is an associate professor from the School of Music with Xiangsheng University based in Hong Kong. He and his father recovered from the COVID-19 and certainly is in good mood. Wuyi, welcome to our program. So good to see you.
Hey, Tianwei, how are you? I'm good.
Obviously, you look wonderful. This is the 12th day since you guys are out of hospital. Tell me how you are feeling today.
Yeah, I'm okay because I checked the temperature just now. It's 36.5. Yeah.
Wow, congratulations. And how is your dad?
Thank you. Oh, no, he's good also. Yeah. Because both of us recovered faster than our expectations. Yeah, we have been back home for 12 days. Yeah.
Congratulations. And you have 2 days to go before the self-quarantine period comes to an end. Only 2 days to go. So how are you spending the past 12 days? Cooking or relaxing?
Right. I spend much time on the cooking because the nutrition is quite important for the recovery of the illness.
So what did you cook for your father?
I think most are the vegetables, as my dad has the
diabetes. Yeah, I see. Okay, he's suffering from diabetes,
yeah.
So vegetable dishes are great. So tell me, now in retrospect, how did you and your dad recover? What were some of the most important stages of your treatment that you think really work for both of you?
I don't know what is the best way, but I can share my experiments, my father and my experiments. I think our life in the past almost 1 month, I think there are 3 points. The first is we went to hospital on time, particularly my dad. He's 77 years old and was in serious condition when we arrived at hospital on February 7th. The doctor said if we went to the hospital later, he cannot imagine what happened. And the second, I think, is 100% trust the medical staff. My dad is a medical professor and a doctor, but we are patients at hospital. So at the first day when we were in hospital, I spoke to the Professor Feng Yi, the leader of the medical team. I said, you can do any treatment without our permission. I 100% trust you. A relationship is a little strange and subtle between the medical doctors and the patients in China. And Professor Feng said it's very important that the patients and their relatives collaborations. And the third, I think, is positive mind. At the beginning of the lockdown, I made myself far from the news, particularly the negative news. I'm a teacher and a scholar, so it's common to stay at home for paper writing, for the academic research. So I tried to shift my attention on my research. I brought my laptop and my books to the hospital. And proudly, I planned an event, an online talk with a Hong Kong contemporary dance company when I was in hospital, that we invited Xiangsheng, a well-known choreographer, to give a talk for the Wuhan college students. I don't want to show I worked hard. What I do is to make myself to be a normal guy, work as usual. Yeah.
Well, it's amazing that when you were in the hospital in serious conditions, you were still trying to organize online events and try to organize contemporary art events for your students, not only here in China, but also.
So nobody realized I was a patient. I'm still a patient.
Interesting. I love that 3 point you just shared. And I heard that you brought some books to the hospital when you were there with your dad. What did you bring? Show us.
This book is a Chinese version written by the Professor Tang Xiaobing. This is a Chinese version. The English version is this one. It's on the visual culture in China.
Okay.
And another one is on the fans, text approaches by the Henry Jackson, and books on the Chinese popular music. This is a Chinese version. Yeah.
That's so cool.
And
Love
this
it.
one is music, culture, and politics and the performance. This
that's great.
From the Taiwan scholars. Yeah.
It seems that you are taking great advantage of the time when you're at hospital. Many would say you are so optimistic a guy. It seems that you and your dad are both that way. I mean, it is something that you could never expect. A disaster coming from the sky almost. But you managed to handle it very well. Tell me, what was it like when you got to know that both you and your father were suffering from COVID-19 and you were supposed to go into the hospital, to check into the hospital? What went through your mind at that time? How did you prepare yourself and your dad?
Actually, my dad is a medical doctor. Both of us do not want to speak too much. We don't mention on it. We checked the body temperature on January 29th and found both of them had a low-grade fever, but lower 38. And then we had some medicine at home, traditional Chinese medicine at home. And on the 5 days later, around 3rd of February, we went to the hospital in the evening. As we were told, it was not busy in the evening because my home is quite close to the hospital, around 5 minutes by walk. And we had a blood check and the CT, and the doctor gave us some medicine, and then we went back home. So it seemed that nothing happened. But 3 days later, I sent the CT result to a friend who is a medical doctor. And then she strongly suggested you must go to the hospital as soon as possible. She said the hospital is the most safest place. And then we contacted the community staff and the medical organizations. But my dad didn't speak too much. And then I think I did not have much time to be nervous. But we are quite lucky, and then 2 days later we got a bed, and then we went to the hospital. I was not scared when we learned maybe we were infected, but when I walked in the street when we came back home, I felt a little nervous, as nobody in the street, a lonely street, a lonely city.
Wu Yi, you mentioned about the city. That's what I really want to ask you about. I mean, you love your city, the city of Wuhan. It's a beautiful one, by the way. Cherry blossom in Wuhan for the spring season is the most well-known throughout China. I'm really looking forward to seeing it, but not this year. What was it like for you, Wei, to know when you walk out of the hospital that people, in order to make sure about the social distancing, needs to stay at home? And
No,
the city is, in a way, blocked from the rest of Hubei and certainly from the rest of China. And you and your dad, your future is not certain yet when you walked out of the hospital. What was it like for you and for your dad?
But I think this is a double edge for the disease hit Wuhan. It's a challenge, also it's an opportunity for the Wuhan. And the most important now is how and what Wuhan people do, and then we can get the response from the outside. Yeah.
So what's your next plan? I mean, what's your plan from now on? This is your 12th day, and we're approaching the 14-day crucial time, self-quarantine, and then you check again with the hospital. Any future plans? What do you want to do if you recover for sure? And what are you going to share with your dad and your family, your friends?
Nothing special. I have to continue stay at home. Even nothing happened because I need to compose my new book, which will be released in this year. So I have some paper.
What is that about? What is the book about?
It's originated from my PhD thesis. It's on the MIDI Music Festival. It's maybe it's the largest outdoor music festival. Yeah.
Wow, it sounds fascinating. The rock and roll here in China and the outdoor music festival. Even though the festival has to postpone this time, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, because this is the 20th anniversary of the MIDI Music Festival. I spoke to the founder of the MIDI Music Festival. He said probably he has to cancel the festival in the May holiday. You know, this is a golden time for the outdoor music festival. Maybe in the National Day holiday.
I really hope that I can see you at the festival in October if it happens then. If not sooner.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. Maybe I can bring my book.
I want to have a copy at least. Thank you so much, Wei. All the best to you and your dad. Thank you for sharing your very precious time with us and precious experience, certainly. A story of a family from Wuhan. And that's all we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us, World Inside CGTN, into your search engine, or check out our YouTube channel and also Twitter and Facebook accounts. I'm Tian Wei. On behalf of the team, thanks for watching. Bye for now.